What I'm about to show you is a real excerpt from one of 20 public information films from Protect and Survive, made in the late 70s by the British government. It was produced alongside print leaflets for mass distribution in the event of a national emergency like a nuclear war. The films detailed tutorial-like instructions of ways to navigate and namely survive the before, during and after stages of an attack. This is the final film of the series, entitled Casualties.
After an attack is over and the all clear has been sounded, arrangements will be made as soon as possible to treat any people who are ill or injured. If anyone dies while you are kept in your fallout room, move the body to another room in the house. Label the body with name and address, and cover it as tightly as possible in polythene, paper, sheets or blankets. If, however, you have had a body in the house for more than 5 days, then you should bury the body for the time being in a trench or cover it with earth and mark the spot of the burial.
I'm showing you this for one main reason. This is what it would have been like. These clips would have been the primary source of information, similar to an EBS, to the public. It was made as a reaction to the time of increased tensions following the events of the 60s. This series is now obviously outdated and available in full on YouTube, and it was released after journalist and public interest at the turn of the 80s. There is probably an updated version in the archives right now, ready to be put into action, and sorry if you have any anxieties about that. Only a few years earlier, in 1965, filmmaker Peter Watkins had only just finished work on a docudrama based on the 1746 Battle of Culloden, named just Culloden, the year prior. It was made to accurately replicate the over 200-year-old battle in a style akin to contemporary war on-the-ground TV reporting. Having noticed the minimal coverage of the arms race on television, Watkins pitched a film to the BBC that would show the possible effects a strike caused by an outbreak of war would have on Britain. The BBC reluctantly gave him a budget, and when, for accurate research, Watkins phoned the Home Office and asked how many hospital beds would the civil defence be able to provide following an all-out nuclear strike on the UK, they became naturally suspicious of what the BBC were trying to make. The end product was The War Game. Filmed in Kent in the spring of 1965, there was no high-profile cast bar two narrators. It's a film that can shock. It's a film that challenges the line between reality and fiction, and it's a film the BBC banned. Not like Ghostwatch, where it was just never shown again. The film was made and never shown on its 6th of October scheduled date until its TV premiere over 20 years later when the ban was lifted. It's also a film that devastated me on first watch, and this is why. It's a 60s TV film, so it opens with a very complex info dump. Very basically, according to the policy at the time, if under attack, Britain would have a large amount of airfield bases, most with some sort of nuclear V-bombers, targeted as their positions are spread out almost evenly across the country, and that would mean devastating amounts of damage. As the film begins, US forces have been given special permission to use nuclear weapons in South Vietnam due to a Chinese invasion. However, the USSR and especially East Germany have threatened to invade West Berlin if America do not change their plan. In response, Britain have transitioned into a state of national emergency and plan to prepare for war. It is okay, you can wake up. The politics are over now! What? Britain is not prepared. A traditional women and children first evacuation plan is organised to areas in the countryside, but it's unknown how many people out of 10 million would be willing to abandon not just their partners, but their previous lives just to crash into a house of strangers. Some people just can't afford to feed a family of 8, and they aren't allowed to refuse.
Should Britain ever thus attempt the evacuation of nearly 20% of her entire population, such scenes as these would be almost inevitable.
It also doesn't help that the large majority of the public aren't educated about nuclear bombs or how to survive through an attack, and if they are educated, it will be at the last minute.
I think it'll die down.
I don't think there's anything to worry about.
No, there won't be a war. I'm quite convinced of that.
While chaos ensues in Berlin, sirens are tested and people attempt to buy supplies to build their own defences, like sandbags. This man here has actually prepared in advance, but the narrator points out that an estimated total cost for every house in England to have a shelter each is £2 billion. The Soviets eventually invade, and the Americans launch their weapons. The Soviets, in response, launched their own weapons, due to many of them being stored above ground and vulnerable to to destruction. I should point out, a lot happens off-screen in this film and instead explained to you, and that's because, as a member of the general public, you would have been almost left in the dark, caught in the crossfire of a political battle where the potential death of soldiers and the general public are left to a roll of the die to see if they'll be caught in collateral damage. Meanwhile, a GP is called to a house for a checkup, and the sirens blare.
This family couldn't afford to build themselves a refuge. This could be the way the last 2 minutes of peace in Britain would look.
A nuclear missile has overshot an airfield and air bursts. Its effects can cause burning of the eyeballs, skin, and furniture.
12 seconds later, the shock front arrives.
At the same time, even though it's over 27 miles away, the flash from the explosion is bright enough to immediately blind anyone who sees it, including this child. Hiding under the table, the shockwaves violently shake the house. Their stares to the camera lack hope. Firestorms erupt in nearby towns, and they generate winds of up to 100 miles per hour.
During a recent meeting of the Ecumenical Council at the Vatican, a bishop told the press that he was sure our nuclear weapons will be used with wisdom.
Britain retaliate by launching V-bombers to do the exact same thing. The narrator humbles this information by stating that the amount of casualties compared to every one doctor equates to one for each 350 people. He also states that it's planned that the doctors would have to filter out who they treat by who is worth treatment. If they aren't, they will be left untreated permanently. There are simply too many who are fatally injured, and they simply can't be buried. Expectantly, many other people will be left shell-shocked, traumatized, in states of fear. This applies to children too. Work begins on identifying the fallen.
Another thing the Germans did after the bombing on Dresden was they took the wedding rings from the bodies. They were trying to identify them from the inscription inside the ring. We are keeping the rings in this bucket here.
The narrator asserts that in the aftermath of an attack like this would happen. Not might, would. The radiation levels being exceedingly high show that any method of defense, prepared or not, is futile. Over silence, an extract from Song for Free Soldiers scrolls on screen. Oh, where are you coming from, soldier, gaunt soldier? With weapons beyond any reach of my mind, with weapons so deadly the world must grow older, and die in its tracks if it does not turn kind. Riots erupt because the diminishing food supplies are withheld and food control centres are then created. Those apprehended for civil disturbance are not put in prison.
May God have mercy on their souls.
They are executed by firing squad. Fire. 4 months later, on Christmas, orphans, refugees and pregnant mothers are housed in a camp. The atmosphere is bleak and a record starts playing. The distortion of the record is similar to that of modern hauntology, and it leaves you uneasy. The narrator states that back in the real world, the press is silent about the steadily climbing number of nuclear weapons worldwide, and drives home the point that when this was made, 1965, this was not far away from a real outcome. People look into the camera with 1,000-yard stare. There is no, and there probably will not be, a happy ending. The war game is a lot, And for no other reasons bar its crippling honesty and graphic portrayal, most of it based on information obtained from Ground Zero of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the film was officially banned by the BBC and restricted from airing. For 20 years it was only shown in limited screenings before finally being broadcast in 1985. The real story is that when Norman Brooke, chair of the BBC Board of Governors, was alerted about the information gained by Peter Watkins, he wrote to the Cabinet Secretary and later previewed the film to many officials, including the head of the Home Office. It's fine, you can stay sleeping. In protest of the ban, Peter Watkins later moved to America to work and in 1971 made Punishment Park, an incredible alternative history drama in virtually the same style. Watkins has now become a film critic and last produced a film in 2000, the nearly 6-hour-long La Commune. The War Game was the first, but not the last anti-war film to be produced by the BBC. Freds was made in 1984 and similarly detailed the after effects of a nuclear strike and fallout. There was also When the Wind Blows and The Day After, produced in the same decade, which again covered similar topics. But there's something about The War Game, something about its harsh portrayal, simplistic presentation, and emotional transcendence means it can shock now. And we're still living in uncertain times. Thank you to Gaxmew, Mr. Ratrox, Killjoy, and Alexandria for supporting the channel.